before her shrine, in which her image is set, and amidst a vast crowd gathering from all quarters, and standing closely packed together, we were intensely interested spectators of the games which were going on, and saw, as we pleased to turn the eye, on this side, a grand display of harlots. On the other, the Virgin Goddess. We saw this virgin worshipped with prayer and with obscene rites. There we saw no shame-faced mimes, no actress overburdened with modesty. All that the obscene rites demanded was fully complied with. St. Augustine describes the worship of the Virgin Goddess, Calestis, in his book, The City of God, and continues, stating that licentiousness practiced only in the secret of home was now being performed publicly in the temple. Any modesty among the throng was replaced with wickedness, so that they may practice their vile rituals. Ever since pagan religions sprang up in the earliest ages of antiquity, sex has been twisted from a pure act within the context of covenant marriage into a form of worship for false gods. The Old Testament is filled with descriptions of sexual immorality being practiced in the name of a god or goddess, such as Baal or Ashtoreth. Sex within the context of covenant marriage is indeed holy worship, but when man falls into fornication, he is worshiping a different god entirely. Because the Bible does not address pornography by its modern name, many think that looking at its images is not a sin. However, Matthew 5:28 says that whoever looks at a woman with lustful intent has already committed the sin in his hearts, thus proving that even the viewing of pornographic material is fornication and is a sin. Illicit sex has become so accepted in today's culture that it can be found at every turn, from commercials and advertisements to hardcore films found on the internet. Those who indulge are not merely engaging in entertainment as they may claim. Instead, they are actually worshiping at the altar of a false god. In addition, a multitude of studies show that even viewing pornographic material debases the mind and can even morph the shape of the brain. Pornography extinguishes the light of all that is sacred and places the user under the illusion that they are gods. Pornography, in fact, is a mighty dragon who lays siege to any and all unsuspecting strongholds. The dragon is greedy and leaves only ash and rubble in its wake. Those who stand against this monster have seen what is at stake and will fight until this grievous threat is extinct. Thus, today's culture is desperate for a hero to save them from themselves and from the media who displays the vilest of images in order to sell a product. Take up this call to arms, a call to tear away the seductive facade that pornography has created around the minds of the unaware. Take up this call to protect the weak and end the oppression of those affected by pornography. Even the greatest of movements started with one man who dared make a change. One man can make a difference just by doing the next right thing and by bringing to light the atrocities of pornography. As the poem Awakened by Lawrence Tribble declares, one man awake awakens another. The second awakens his next door brother. The three awake can rouse a town by turning the whole place upside down. The many awake can cause such a fuss that it finally awakens the rest of us. One man up with dawn in his eyes, surely then multiplies.
Jonathan, in your paper, you describe pornography rather alarmingly as if it were a drug addiction. justify that bold claim?
Thank you for that question, Ms. Mayhem. In the book, Drug of the New Millennium, by Dave Castleman, the author, Dave Castleman himself, describes pornography as a drug, stating that it meets all the requirements of drugs. A chemical ingested or inhaled or put into the body or viewed that changes the mental state. He even describes the brain waves of people who have just used pornography to people who have just taken LSD, and shows that they are actually very similar and that the brain waves themselves line up in a very similar way. I can also compare pornography to being a drug because Dave Castleman also says that a whole host of chemicals are released after the use of pornography, such as serotonin, which is an actual chemical that they give patients in hospitals who are under a lot of pain. It is a natural painkiller. I could also say oxytocin, that is another chemical released after using pornography, which makes connections between human beings. When you give someone a hug or hold their hand, oxytocin is released in the brain and forms connections with that person. However, when someone watches pornography, they bond a connection with the substance itself. And lastly and namely, dopamine is the main chemical that is released after watching pornography. What dopamine does is it creates a sense of euphoria. And it is, as Elizabeth said, the happy drug released in the brain. And as that happens, as dopamine is continually released, the nerve endings in your brain are worn down like a path in the woods. If you walk that same path daily, while it may be grown up, it will eventually become nothing but dirt. And in the same way, as dopamine is released continuously and in high amounts that pornography produces, it clears a path of nerve endings in your brain and actually reduces gray matter in the brain itself.
Jonathan, you describe pornography as being integrated into nearly every age, every social class, and every type of modern American life. So, what do we do?
Thank you for that question, Mr. Kaufman. As I stated in my speech, pornography can be found at every turn, from commercials and advertisements to hardcore films found on the internet. Whether you're walking through the Cool Springs Mall and turn your head to the left and see Victoria's Secret pinup models spread all over the windows, or you're watching TV and a Hardee's commercial comes up with a woman seductively eating a burger. While that commercial may make you hungry, it is also disgraceful that pornography has found its way into culture the way it has. 50 years ago, if someone wanted to look at pornography, they would have to sneak out late at night, go into skeevy movie theaters playing XXX movies, or they would have to buy magazines and sneak around. Nowadays, you can go on your phone and type in a search term that is not even related to pornography, and the vilest of images will pop up. To answer your question, what do? We make the truth known. We show that pornography is not healthy and it is not normal, but it degrades women and places them in points of humiliation where they are beaten in front of an applauding audience. If this is not enough to turn people away from pornography, let them know that the chemicals released in their brain are reducing their gray matter and they are destroying them from the inside. Let the people know the truth of what is happening.
Jonathan, Thomas Chalmers has made the argument that worship envelops and reshapes the whole of life. You've made the argument that pornography is a form of idol worship. But you've also made the argument that even the intimacy of covenant marriage is a form of worship. My question is, how so? How is intimacy in covenant marriage a form of worship?
Thank you for that question, Dr. Grant. The book of Malachi describes a relationship between a husband and a wife coming together with a portion of the Spirit in their relationship, creating a Trinity-like image. And the output of a relationship of a husband and a wife with a portion of the Spirit is godly children who will grow up to worship Him. When I say that sex within the context of covenant marriage is indeed holy worship, I mean worship as a form of giving honor or reverence to a being who is higher than us. So, as we worship, and as a husband and a wife comes together with a portion of the Spirit and has godly children, we are imitating God Himself by sub-creating and honoring Him by creating offspring who will also grow up to honor Him. And the idea of sex within the context of covenant marriage being holy worship, that may seem radical in today's culture, but even the pagans realized it. In the book Epic of Gilgamesh, a shepherd notices the wild man Enkidu running through the fields and tells his son to go find the king Gilgamesh and tell him of this wild man who may possibly rival him. When the son gets to Gilgamesh, Gilgamesh tells him to go to the temple and find a priestess/prostitute to go and lay with Enkidu, so that he may become tame. The key phrase in there is priestess/prostitute. Even the pagans realize that sex is a form of worship. Whether we are worshiping in the name of a false god, like the pagans did, whether we are worshiping our partner, whether we are worshiping the act, or we are worshiping ourselves, we are worshiping something other than God when we disobey Him.